Talks with T and Shez.
Hi.
Hello.
How you doing?
Hi, I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good today. We're back on the Tea and Shez. Oh, Shez, I'm sorry about last week.
Do you know something? These things happen. Totally understand. Really missed you, though.
I could see when I went back and reviewed it. I did try to get on a little bit at the time. I was like, oh, bless, love her, love you. It's all in the business of what we're doing. Life is life as well. Life still goes on.
But that's it. And it's about adjusting. In fact, we talked about that, didn't we? You know, recognizing when things don't always go our way, we adjust to the moment and we keep it moving.
We just have to. It's just the way it is. It's life, isn't it? Really, life just has a way of, if something crops up, we have to just get on with it. Yeah. And I think one of the things is when you're able to work with people that are able to be like yourself, quite flexible with how we do things. Right. But that stems from probably our subject that we're going to go into today, about culture and how we are brought up, the culture of probably the way we brought up our children. And that's the culture that this is a subject that we're going to be doing for the next, I would say, a few weeks, because we're going to do different avenues of culture, aren't we?
Yes. And there's so many different areas, and the spectrum is actually quite vast and quite intimidating, really, because when you're dealing with culture, because it's going to reflect something, it's going to say something to different people.
Yeah.
And some people are going to hear what we say and like, that's not true. And another person might say, oh, that is spot on.
Exactly.
But reality, because when we're dealing with the subject of culture, it's unique to individuals. So, and that's the reason why I'm excited, because we're going to get other people on here so we can get a wider perspective of other people's culture. So it won't just be mine, it won't just be T's, but it'll be an array of other people as well, just so we can make sure we've got something which everybody can relate to in some way, shape or form. That's the aim, really.
Yeah, so but it's really, really good, because I think it's really good that we've thought to bring other people on, because it'll break it up. Yeah, like you said, break it up, and we're able to function. I don't know what I'm talking about now. Get over it, Atencia. Yeah, break it up. We are just who we are. So I'm looking forward to the different elements of culture that we're going to be talking about.
Definitely.
So just today, I just want to kind of encourage people to understand what we are about. We are here to empower and enable women, also other males, teens, whatever, whoever comes on. We are here to empower them, to give them, I would say, to give them the ability to probably even reflect on things and to start to look at what they could do differently, or what they could do, just really what they could do differently, I would think, or even embrace what they're doing already. Because, sometimes some of what we're doing already is okay, and we might be beating ourselves up and saying it's not good enough, it's not this. But then we're trying to get people to understand that you are who you are. What you need to do is capitalize on the gifts you've got and the abilities that you've got. So if you capitalize on those, then you can be the world's best fan of yourself, be your own fan. And that's kind of what we're looking at doing. Would you say, Shez? Would you?
Yes, I definitely agree. And as the title is, it's limitless talk. So when we're looking at limitless, a lot of times we put those limits and barriers on ourselves. So it is about pushing through those barriers and just making sure that we're not limiting the way that we think, the way that we do things. But it is about moving forward and pressing towards the mark. I mean, we constantly say every single week that we are Christians, so naturally a lot of what we say is going to be entangled with biblical knowledge and biblical ethoses, because that's just part of who we are. Again, in today's topic, that's part of our culture. But now it's the culture that we have nurtured in our lives. So that is going to be something which is going to be the underlying bedding and the foundation of what we're doing. But we believe that reality is these principles, biblical principles, are good principles, principles that will help everybody. Doesn't matter who you are, you can actually take things from this principle. And we really, really hope actually that as you start to hear some of these principles, it will encourage you just to read more, find out more about why we believe in what we believe in. You know, that's always a bonus for us, and that's, you know, ultimately that's what we're on this earth to do.
Yeah, because I think it's so important that we understand who we are, and obviously we come from a as you said, a fact of we're Christians, so we believe there's a creator. We believe that God has established us as far as we have. And so, do you know what I mean? So we want to say hi to everybody out there. We can see that Prophet Anthony's watching, and another lady, a friend of mine actually from back in the day, Elaine Hughes. She's watching as well. So hopefully we'll get some more, but we'll only do the introductions at the beginning. So But so Shez, we are talking about culture today. I want to know about your culture, how you brought up, and what you. Come on, tell me more about your culture.
More about me. Now, this is a very vulnerable part, isn't it, of our life? When we start really, really and truly, I'm very much a reserved person, really. So me just really open up about me. Can't be done in just this short period of time, Tim.
You're gonna have to break it down, girl.
I'm gonna have to break it down and home it in, and it is difficult because you're talking about our lifetimes here. So there's absolutely loads we can divulge in, and I just want to make a disclaimer right here and now is that the parts which I'm talking about now is what comes to mind here and now in this moment. There are going to be folds and avenues which I might not necessarily touch on, but our lives, I always describe it as we're like an onion. So even onion, it's got loads of layers. It's got lots of layers down to the heart of it. So I'm going to try and get to the heart and stay on the heart of who I am and where that comes from. Because again, our culture is unique. So this is unique to me. This is not, and even though I have siblings, I'm one of 5. And we all grew up in the exact same home setting, but there's going to be parts that I'm going to receive, and my journey is going to be different to theirs because the person who I am. Yes, we might have grown up within the same cultural settings and the boundaries and the barriers and the things which we're open to, but this is unique to me based on my personality trait, how I perceive things and how I digest and kind of analyze things. So, my family, I love you dearly. We've been on the exact same journey. They are my best friends, literally my best friends. But my journey is unique to me. So that's my
what I would say though, Shez, is that, even at and I'm not going to go on this subject, but even as a married couple, when we have an argument, not an argument because we don't actually argue in our house, what we do, we have conversations. But when we have a disagreement, what I realize is both perspectives are very different.
Yes.
And then you have to come to a place where you're like, oh, so you were thinking that and I was thinking this. So that's what that disclaimer is about, isn't it?
That's what the disclaimer is about. It's about reality. Reality. We process information differently, and we know exactly. We always talk about this theory of men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Exactly.
So, we have to try to relate with the Martians because we live with them.
Yeah.
But also living in that family setting, reality, I'm going to digest and process information different to my siblings, different to my parents. But it's so amazing how we've coexisted for so many years of our lives, and we've come out of it and we've all gone to our separate homes. But you know something, they are my rock, my foundation, my family. They're right there at the center of it. And that really talks about my home culture and how I grew up. I grew up with the knowledge and understanding that, family comes first. So that's always been number one.
I agree.
It doesn't matter what happens. If we had an argument, there was no, I'm not talking to you. No, that was not even allowed. In fact, I don't remember ever saying it. It was just, you talked it out, and 1 minute later, you're there laughing and joking with each other again. You just, and that was part of our home culture. We didn't let anger never stayed with us. We didn't have any issues with each other or with other people, because we were taught to love each other. Loving each other doesn't always mean agreeing with each other. We always had discussions, and as you said, discussions. We always had discussions, and we were a family who liked to debate. On a Sunday, we'd sit down around the table, and it wasn't just our family. I'm talking about family and friends. They were all classed as family. Sunday dinner, after church, it was like, I'm coming to your house for dinner, and we'd have loads of us in the house, Sunday dinner, and we'd sit around the table. It was laughy, it was chatty. Everyone spoke over each other. But for us, that was normal. That's how we communicated. It was loud. We didn't all think the same way, not at all. But we respected each other's opinions and just recognised that was an, oh gosh, sorry, that's the house phone.
Oh wow!
I'll keep it close, and I'm going to answer it. So we always kept each other really close together. And I think, to be honest, that really is the core. At my core is that ethos of living and coexisting with each other in a respectful way. Like I said at my disclaimer at the start, is whatever comes to mind in this moment. And I'm sure, and you tell me about your upbringing.
Hey, coming on to me shortly.
You're gonna have to ask me a question to jog up more.
So you said that obviously on a Sunday you would or around the dinner table there'd be loads of family members there, and you would literally be talking over each other. That I'm going to tag on to, because my husband totally hates that. Right? Because I actually grew up like that as well. We would literally talk and everybody wants to get their word in and things like that. And but my husband totally hates it, so I have to bear that in consideration now. But we're not going on to the now. We're still staying on the history. We were exactly the same, very similar. There was only in my family there was only three of us. In terms of my older sisters had left home already, so it was my mom. My dad had passed away, of course, and then so there was my mom, my sister older than me, and then me. And we had a very we used to always sit down talking in the living room. My sister was kind of, she didn't mind talking, but she got a bit bored after a bit, and she'd just go upstairs and do some reading or something. But me and my mum, we used to chat about everything. And as you guys know, I keep saying my mum was my person that I used to go to, my go-to she was. But one of the things that I identified with, I do believe this may well be because we were in church, was that we had a lot of people that used to come around the house. And literally we'd probably get a phone call, oh, Sister Gordon, I'm coming up to see you now. And Mummy goes, go and do some fried dumplings. And we'd have to do some fried dumplings or something so that somebody has something to eat when they come, because you never wanted anybody, our parents didn't want anybody to leave the house without any food.
Definitely.
So,
no. Same.
They have to be fed before they leave. So I think that very similarly, and that's probably because we're from a West Indian culture, Jamaican culture. It's possibly that something that happened in Jamaica that translated over here when our parents came to England as well.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, that, you know, I think that definitely has a part to play in the way that we grew up. I mean, it was a matter of, if you want something, if it's in the cupboards, you have it. So I know if I wanted, if I bought something and I didn't want anyone to eat it, I'd have to hide it in my bedroom. So I'd buy cakes and like hide it under the bed, and then my siblings would just see me going upstairs with a knife and think, Shell's got food.
Should we go find that?
Let's go find where it is. But reality, if it was eaten, it wasn't a problem, because you just knew if you find it, you can have it. That was how it was. It was really kind of open. And it was funny when you talk about the talking over each other, because it's something that I do. I've got friends, we laugh and joke and we talk over each other all the time. And I've had to rein that in certain environments. They find it offensive, and I'm not trying to be offensive, but it can be perceived that way because in their home and that their culture, that is a no. Don't do it.
Well, the thing is, I mean, when me and you are on the phone, we're literally talking over each other all the time, innit? Like, you know, like I remember when my hubby, because he really doesn't talk over. I think he's learned the skill now to do it because I do it so much. Because I do it so much. I think sometimes he now does it, but it was never something he did. And he used to say to me when he used to see me and my friends talking, he was like, "How do you do it?" I says, "We hear everything each other says." Because there's just not a pause. But for every I think for every family it would have been definitely different, depending, because in my house I used to watch my mum. If I did something out of line, she just needed to give me a look, and I actually don't know when I learned that look was a look. I don't know when I learned it. It just became something that I knew. Oh, mum's giving me that look. How did I learn that? I don't know, because I don't remember the specific time when she did it, and I could turn around and say, "Oh well, my mum gave me that look, and I knew what it meant." Do you know what I mean? I knew what it meant.
Yeah. And it's amazing that, you know, those different habits, those become the norm within your household, because you do take it on as well. And even when I'm thinking about how we grew up and within my home culture, you knew that, you know, Saturday was soup. You know, we had Saturday soup. But also just reining in and just a little bit in terms of, I think about my culture as in how I was brought up and how we was taught about what was good and what was bad. I grew up in a Christian home. So it's a Christian home. It was, you know, the Bible states that this is good or this is bad. But reality, we had choices. We had choices to make that choice to either choose whatever life destination we had. And there was them there. And even when I think about even the culture around education, my parents they wanted us to be educated and they encouraged us to do our homework and we, you know, and all those kind of things. But it wasn't to the point of, okay, you need to now go to college, you need to go to university, you need to do this, you need to that. It wasn't drilled into us at that stage. It was manners was taught more than anything else. That's how I perceived it. Let me say that. So it was about how you live. It's having a work ethic. That was, I mean, I think, to be honest, from my dad's point of view, we could be sitting down. If my dad walked into the room, he's like, get up and do something. We couldn't even, he didn't like laziness. It's something which is a pet hate for him. So even now, as an adult, if I'm in my house and people know me for it, I'm always looking for something to do, because I was never allowed to kind of sit down and just, we did sit down and relax with each other, but it had to be when everything was done. So once everything was done, and I remember the times you could sit down and my mum would scan the room and come in and she'll say, go clean the skirt and go.
But to be fair, if you think about it, I mean, how many of you were there in your family?
5.
5
in the
so
household. I want to
times,
5 children, then mum and dad as well. There's 7 of us in the house.
right, 7 of you in the house. So there again, if I think about, reflect on when I was bringing up the boys, and sometimes when I just wanted a little bit of peace in my living room, just me to think on my own, it could have been just those set reasons that you were in her space and she didn't actually know how to tell you to get out my space without disrespecting you.
Clean the light bulb.
Without disrespecting you. And so because you said that, there's something that you said earlier about your family having basically you were never allowed to say I'm not speaking to you, but you were allowed to thrash out the issues between you. And you know, I was reading a scripture the other day, Psalms 34 verses 14. It says, turn away from evil and do good, seek peace and pursue it. And I remember reading that scripture many years ago and turning to my husband and saying, you know what seek peace and pursue it means? It means to confront a situation, and after you've confronted it and you've literally said, okay, what the yeses, the nos, after you've said those things, then you can turn around and say that has made peace. Because what's happened is you have an understanding. And as I said at the beginning, sometimes because of our cultural differences, even with our partners, we realize that we have to go into a deeper conversation to actually recognize, okay, you were thinking actually slightly different to me. And so when the scripture says, turn away from evil and do good, when you're actually resolving without a big palaver of an argument, because if you think about arguments leave you in a state of uncomfortability. You're uncomfortable when you finish because sometimes you don't actually resolve. You have to come back and resolve. Whereas if you have a template set, so that to me was a very good cultural template that your family set in the house, because they said they were Christians first and foremost, and they took the Bible literally, I would think, because they're saying we're not going to have conflict in terms of a big argument, but how we will
healthy conflict. So you have conflict,
healthy,
but there's always a pursuit to resolve it.
Resolve, And so as you can hear, we talk over each other. So when the scriptures say seek peace and pursue it, make sure it comes into existence. Seeking peace is about literally resolving situations and saying that, back in the day, I remember going to church and there was this one sister that would say she's not going to get into any arguments, but they never actually resolved any situations. And that's what I realized. I remember my mom trying to resolve something at some point and they didn't want to have the conversation, and they says, I just want peace, but that's not actually peace, because what happens is that something else crops up and then it adds to the fire. Sometimes, and in that what takes place is that you end up having more of a conflict of interest because you haven't outed the issue that initially started the conflict that you're in. You think that your peace is by being silent, but it's not. Your peace is when you confront a situation. And the Bible says to turn from evil, and do good at all times. Seek peace and evil. And Peter says it, First Peter 3 verse 11. He says that as well. Exactly the same as Psalms. That we must, because evil is when we have somebody in our hearts. So really, your culture has taught you to make sure that the whole environment around you is living in peace, so that your godly precepts, we didn't plan to go down here, but somehow I'm jumping on
keep rolling so
that your godly precepts can be established within you. So isn't it amazing how we fight based on culture, you actually learnt these attributes?
And that's it. And because reality, because it's entangled, it was embedded, wasn't it? So these natural behaviors are embedded. I mean, the world calls it conflict resolution. And, you get people which are paid to go in, to situations just to help resolve. We've got counsellors which are in place. A lot of the principles, I've done a counselling course, and a lot of the principles is right there in the Bible. When you look at all these ones about, you know, becoming that enlightened person, I see a lot of the same principles which I grew up with, and which I encourage my children to even hold even today. Now, even though I said about the conflict side, that was amongst us siblings. Growing up in my household, we didn't have those kind of conversations with mummy and daddy.
No.
We ended up in a whole nother conflict.
Well, that would be a very different conflict.
So I was taught as a young child that when adults are in the room, you don't talk. You just.
Do you know what, Shez? I totally identify with that one, because that was in my household too. You do not say anything. If you wanted to go to mum and dad after and probably say, you know what you said, you had to be so humble and meek.
Do you know? I that culture wasn't nurtured. So the whole going to mum and dad and saying how you feel, that emotional sensitivity and all those things. No, it was just mum said this, dad said this, period.
That's it.
Gotten older and obviously and moved out and formed our own friendships and and relationships. I have a different relationship with my parents now, but growing up that wasn't in there. But I've always been on the pursuit for that. So even with the relationship I have with my children, and because that is a real big part of my life, is I love sociology, love looking into behavior traits and personality traits, all those things to do with emotional well-being, all those things to look at how we are made up and why people do the things that they do, and all those questions about those lifestyles is a personal interest of me. So even with my children, they're reading books about personality traits. My daughter's reading it at the age of 9, and she's reading books and coming back to me, and we're having these conversations which I would have with yourself, with other adults. I'm having those conversations with my daughter. And again, because sometimes we go through certain things and we decide, okay, this is something that I liked or something I didn't like. However, saying that, I do see the benefits of children knowing their place when they're in the presence of adults. I
definitely.
And sometimes I've had to claw back some of my things that I've said to my children. I want you to be open, and I need some, like, not in this position, not when we're here. I think afterwards, have manners. And
do you know what, Shez? I'm going to be real with you. I was very similar with the boys. I was like, you can. I remember the dad thinking they needed to do something else in terms of educationally, and I was like, they need to do what they want to do. But where the boys were concerned, we had a very open forum. However, there was a limit to, because it's like all of a sudden I'd get my mum's hat on, and all of a sudden what my mum would do would be, you're going too far now, like you're getting too far. And I think yes, because I do think that there has to be balance. And what I remember years ago saying to somebody that I think what's happened is that we've lost some of our culture. Like, for me, I was brought up to call nearly everybody in my church auntie. That's how I was brought up, because of respect. The word respect was really important. Or my older sister, I called her Miss.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I won't say her name, but if I called her, I would go Miss Atencia.
Yeah.
That's how. And so in terms of that, we were taught that was an element of respect that we had to have. Now, when I look at it, I think that when I left my mum's, I decided I was not going to do certain things with my children, impose on them certain things. And then later on, I probably thought, probably I should have imposed this or imposed that. But it is what it is. It is where it is. And I didn't. So in saying that, I was very, very up on respect massively. I was, and even to this day, I hear people say, I saw your son, and gosh, he's got so much manners. I used to say to the
I was just about to say that, because as much as you said you didn't instill some of those, I know even your eldest son, I'm not sure if I can say his name, but if I'm supposed to. Jonathan. I always call him Jonathan. I can't help it. But
that's his name.
That's his name. I'm sorry. Yeah. He even he was calling me auntie. I'm like, don't call me auntie. I'm too close to your age. I'm like, that's so weird to me. But it's because of the way I grew up in my culture. And I had friends that were quite happy and they'd say, oh yes, mom, to my mom. They'd say mom. And I wouldn't have any problems with that. But we were brought up to call, if you called your auntie or cousin, because you know, with my mum's cousins, we would have to say cousin this or cousin that. But that was because they were family members. Yeah. So they have a title, but we weren't brought up to call other people or for other people to have that title. And even till this day, I admire those who can go, oh, hello, mum, or hello, auntie, and to other people, because I think it's actually really sweet. But I struggle with it. I struggle with it till this day. I still struggle of what to call my mother-in-law. I struggle, and it's because my parents was like, no, that's not their title. I mean, they're not your auntie. Those,
right. Yeah.
So I had to. So, and it's also looking at, especially with mom. I grew up with my mom. So my mom had that title. So for me to call somebody else mom, because I have an image of what mom is, the person who gave birth to me, who did this, and that. And I suppose that's the rigid, matter of fact mindset.
You know what? I would think that because don't forget, I'm about a generation and a half before you.
Yes.
And my mum was that way. It's really weird because my grandchildren's mother said to me that basically she doesn't see, because I was trying to impose that on her. That's so rude, isn't it? Isn't it rude? I was trying to go, I grew my children calling them everybody auntie, but realistically that was a bit unfair. And then she gave me her point of view, and I thought, you know what, that is very personal to you. And then I've realized that even in talking to you and talking to people around me that are younger, that is the general consensus. Do you know what I mean? You don't call somebody auntie that's not auntie. And especially in this day and age, it made me realize when I spoke to her, and then we had a proper little conversation, when it made me realize that this generation is very, very different in terms of that if they relate to everybody as auntie and uncle, they can be abused by anybody. Do you understand what I mean? Whereas in my era, it was everybody was trusted, but then I remember being actually abused. Do you know what I mean? By somebody who was classed as a family member, but they weren't my real family. Do you understand what I mean? So if we look at it from that perspective, it's really highlighted that there are some things in our culture that probably was not unnecessary, really. Do you know what I mean? And we probably could have got a different balance. Like, you know, I know there were some people that I would call Mr. and Mrs. Do you know what I mean? By their surname. So I never knew their first name until when somebody went to their funerals. Like, you know, but in terms of how I looked at it, I gave my children, I told them to call everybody auntie, but even John said to me, Mom, I don't need to call everybody auntie. And I was like, you know, you're a big man. You don't need to. Do you know what I mean? Realistically, unless, and I had a friend as well, who her daughter, she used to always be very respectful, brought up with respect. But I must admit, when her mum heard her call me auntie, her mum went, my daughter don't call people auntie, even her own, for joke. Yeah. Do you understand what I mean? Because you must have done something. And that, I think in essence, now I'm looking at it, I'm thinking that title is something you give to somebody who deserves that respect to a large degree. Do you know what I mean? Because an auntie or a godmother is somebody who's supposed to be.
It's that title, isn't it? I think I've always been going that everyone deserves respect, and it's, you know, everyone deserves respect, and everyone's treated equal. Everyone is treated equal. But I'm just looking at the time. Sorry, we did say that.
I'm just looking at the time. I told you it was going to.
I could keep talking forever and ever and ever, because we've only really scratched the very surface and talked about a few elements. And I suppose it's about, why are we doing this? Why are we talking about these areas? It's because that if we start to really unpick some of the things that we do and why we do it, we'll have a better understanding. We'll be able to analyze why we do it and then decide whether we should continue or not to make those changes. We've spoke already about talking over each other, and I've had to learn to make those changes and to adjust, and not just say, well, that's just who I am, and get all, get all in my feelings, as they say. When someone really confronts me, I have to respectfully acknowledge that, actually, Cheryl, that's not appropriate with that person. And just for peace sake, because there are times when we have to be peaceful and just draw back and say, actually, that part of me is not going to allow me to communicate to you effectively. It's not going to allow me to get the job that I need to do, because I need to be able to approach life in a different way when I'm in this setting. However, it just highlights that culture is so important. There's parts of our culture that we grew up with, and if we keep doing away with it, it's going to disappear. It won't exist anymore.
Okay, I think this is the last part I'm going to go on. And one thing you just mentioned again was the piece of it. Do you know what I mean? So it seems like that scripture is a scripture that is really fluid at this present moment in this conversation. However, do you know, when I went to a funeral, because you remember our funerals are tambourine, singing.
I was the other day.
Fantastic. You know, it's like at the burial ground, everybody goes to the burial ground, and everybody goes. And we went to the burial ground, and there was not very many people that knew the old time Christian songs and it just felt so different. And I was like, this is I mean, because we haven't been able to go to funerals, have we? But I think this was in the break, you know, when we had the when they did COVID lockdown and then they reopened. So in that time I went to a funeral, and literally I was like, oh my gosh, we've lost that essence of our culture. Do you know what I mean? In some areas, depending on the church you go to as well, because
culture you're in, right.
Because we've adjusted to be more modern or more embracing of another side of culture, which is the culture of the land that we live in. It's just very, very different. Whereas I would suspect that in our homeland, Jamaica, that is still going on now. They all know the old time songs and they still go, or whatever they do. I don't know.
You'd be surprised, and I think that's why these conversations are good, and having different people on, because in different settings, we're talking about in my setting, you know, I've been to funerals during the COVID times, and if I haven't gone personally, I've seen video footages of different ones, and they are still singing the old songs. There's people younger than me, they're singing it and leading the choruses. So it all depends on that home setup, that setup within that community setup that they are in, to kind of keep these things going. So it all depends on the circumstances and the situation. But definitely next week we are going to be continuing this conversation, and we will be, like I said, we're doing it for a few weeks, for the fact that this is huge. This is because we've only talked about Sunday dinner and cleaning the house.
I mean, this is just one session, and that's all. So we're going to look at things like education, race, dress conduct, perceptions, work environments. We're going to look at different things like that on the next stint of conversations on culture. So guys, we really want to hear your perceptions, and we might bring them in if you're okay with it. Just literally, you can actually inbox us on Messenger, or you can even, as you go back, probably reflect on the video, make some comments so that we can see what you think, and we can probably even bring them in. We really, really want to hear your voice. We've been speaking for weeks now, and we really want to hear the voice of the people that's listening to us.
Do you know something? Whether you agree or disagree,
yeah,
it's all done respectfully. We're the kind of people we're humble enough to receive whatever in the context, because reality, it's personal opinion. But yeah, we would definitely love to hear it.
Yeah. So with that in mind, we want to encourage you to embrace who you are, enjoy who you are, and whatever you do in your family culture, enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? You might want to recalibrate some things even after our conversation, but you know, I don't think I'm going to do much changes, because it is what it is. However, it is what it is. It is how we function with our children, with our family, with however we function. Just embrace that, and just understand that you have the ability to literally, in an environment, say, you know, I understand where you're coming from, but this is where I'm coming from. It's been able to stand in who you are, and not always be moving from pillar to post to change your concept based on those around you. You are individual. Love your individuality and enjoy yourself, because you are, what's the word?
Limitless.
Yes. And with that, we want to say, have a great day. Enjoy yourself. Shez, do you want to say anything quickly?
Just something. Have a blessed day. We love you. We pray that this week will be just an eye-opener for you as you continue your journey of life, discovering who you are and who you're supposed to be.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Talks with Shez.